Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise.
It's hard to hear me. We can't hear anything you're saying.
Okay. Testing.
Well, just flip the mic up.
Right. Oh, it's floppy. Everyone entering the public hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then those who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, thank you everybody for coming out and participating. Much appreciated. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer. Danley.
Here.
Gillespie.
Here.
Moore. Here. Mooney. Seha.
Here.
Torres.
Here.
Dome. 5 present, 3 absent.
Great. All right, we're starting off tonight by creating that consent agenda, and we'll start off with meeting minutes and work session meeting minutes from September 9th. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review those. Are there any questions or comments on either of those? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and place the work session meeting minutes and the commission meeting minutes of September 9th on the consent agenda. That moves us to item A, which is PUD 22-40 Rodney Evans and Partners LLC, which is a time extension located at 2312 South Broadway Avenue. Is the applicant present? Nope, they are not. That's okay. They are asking for a time extension, and we have no opposition to that. Any comments from commission on that particular item? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and place item A, PD 22-40 on the consent agenda. Okay, that moves us to item number 3. CUP 24-19 Snowcap Construction, which is a conditional use permit to expand a legal non-conforming use located at 2608 West Bannock Street. Is the applicant present in person or online? Oh, I think I see online. Yep, I do. Mr. Stevens, Luke Stevens, are you with us? Yes?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. And I'm assuming you agree with the terms and conditions in the staff report?
Yes.
Very good. All right. Hold on one second. Is there anybody online or in the session that wishes to testify against item number 3 in opposition to CUP 24-19 located at 2608 West Bannock Street? Item number 3, opposition to anybody? Seeing none, item number 3 will go ahead and place on the consent agenda. Okay, moving along to number 4, SUB 24-20 Bulldog Estates subdivision located at 4651 North Dalton Lane, a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision. Is the applicant in the session or in the test in the, let me try that again. There you in the back. There you go. Thank you. And I'm assuming you agree with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody here tonight that wishes to testify in opposition of item number 4, SUB 24-20, either in chambers or online? Item number 4. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and put item number 4 on the consent agenda. And that does it. So I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we place the following items on the consent agenda. The meeting minutes from the September 9th work session and commission meeting. Item number A, the time extension for PUD 22-40. Item number 3, CUP 24-19. And item number 4, SUB 24-20 with all their respective terms and conditions, their respective staff reports.
Excellent. I have a motion by Commissioner Moore. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Torres seconds. Okay, great. So I have a motion for consent agenda, and will the clerk please call the roll? Unless there's any discussion, I should ask that first. Sorry. Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and take the roll.
Danley,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Let's move on to item number 1. And this is going to be a request for deferral. CVA 24-12 Lombard Conrad Architects. This is a request for a variance and also a request for a conditional use permit, both located at 7210 West Barrister Drive. Is the applicant present? No, I see nobody. Okay. Well, I guess I will move forward. Is there anybody here this evening who was hoping to testify to item number 1, CVA 24-12 and CVA 24-28, who cannot make it to the November 4th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting? Anybody online or in the chambers? Okay. Seeing none, applicant not present, don't necessarily need them. The request is to defer to November 4th. There's nobody here that can't make it, so I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we move CVA 24-12 and CUP 24-28 to the November 4th, 2024 commission meeting.
Excellent. I have a motion by Commissioner Moore. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Torres. Any discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Danley,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, that brings us to our one and only item. Item number 2, CAR 24-12, located at 2272 South 5 Mile Road. We have an application for a rezone and also an application for a preliminary plat. Take it away, Ms. Lau.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is CAR 24-12 and SUB 24-35. This is a request to rezone approximately 3.34 acres located at 2272 5 Mile Road from R1B/AIO to R1C/AIO and a preliminary plat for residential subdivision comprised of 2 common and 22 buildable lots. The subject property lies within the Airport Influence Area A, which allows new residential development without any density restrictions, but does require an navigation easement and sound mitigation. The subject property is designated suburban on the future land use map, as are the surrounding parcels. The surrounding parcels are zoned R1B to the north, east, and south, and R1A to the west. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to R1C to extend a public roadway and construct 22 single-family homes at a density of 6.6 units per acre, below the 12.4 units allowed by the zone. The requested R1C zoning is compatible with the comprehensive plan and appropriate for the location, as the property is along an arterial roadway near commercial uses to the north. As proposed, all lots will meet the dimensional standards of the R1C zone. The proposed roadway will be approximately 800 feet long and will end in a temporary fire turnaround on the adjacent parcel. This turnaround will be required to be placed in a temporary easement until the future public roadway extension to the east connects to the existing stub street. ACHD has conditioned a 50-foot cul-de-sac at the terminus of the roadway, as well as traffic calming infrastructure along the roadway. The applicant is working with ACHD to finalize the style of turnaround and traffic calming measures to be provided. A recommended modification to condition number 4 clarifies that the temporary turnaround must be in a public easement and that the city of Boise must review the easement language prior to recordation. Additionally, the applicant is proposing the required detached sidewalk along both 5 Mile Road and the Targhee roadway extension, and as conditioned, the landscape plan meets all the requirements of the development code with a mixture of class 2 and class 3 street trees to be provided. Public comment was received with concerns outlined in your packet and on the screen. The proposed density of 6.6 unit per acre is slightly over the 4.8 units per acre allowed within the R1B zone, and the comprehensive plan calls for a variety of housing types and sizes within neighborhoods. The proposed single-family lots are compatible with the existing single-family homes in the area and must meet all dimensional requirements. Additionally, ACHD has reviewed the proposal and has provided conditions for traffic calming on the roadway extension. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Please note the modified language for condition number 4 with the modifications shown in red on your screen.
Chair, Commissioners, Nicolette Womack, address is 1100 West Idaho Street, Suite 210, Boise, Idaho 83702. Thank you for your time tonight. We're here representing Sunsmith Estates subdivision. Shown here is the applicant team for the project. So unable to make it tonight are Chris Anderson and Chad Smith with Sunsmith LLC. Danny is here from Sunsmith LLC. Teller and Haley are engineers with Kimley Horn here tonight. I myself am a planner with Kimley Horn. So before you tonight again is that rezone or zoning map amendment called these days. It's a rezone for the property from R1B to R1C and a preliminary plat to plat the parcels for individual sale. Our process started back in March of this year. So we had our pre-application meeting. We had a neighborhood meeting in June, and at that time we did show 27 units on the plan. We submitted our application in August, and that was 22 units. And then we're here tonight for P&Z and then in the future for council. Shown here is the site. So we do have frontage on 5 Mile, which is an arterial roadway. The property is approximately 3.34 acres. And just in case you don't know this area as well, this area is within a 3-minute drive to Fred Meyer and Albertsons, 5-mile drive to Peppermint Park, 6-minute drive to Molina Park, Walmart and Lowe's, 9 minutes to Costco and Boise Town Square Mall, 14 minutes to the Village at Meridian, 17 minutes to downtown Boise, which is these days a dream commute to get to downtown Boise. And we are within reasonable timeframes to all the adjacent schools. So 6 minutes to Maple Grove, 7 minutes to West Junior High, and 15 minutes to Boros Senior High. So you'll see in the staff report that it says we're just outside the 1/2-mile radius for the activity center, but the activity center almanac in 2019, done in 2019, has such great information. We wanted to provide some of those stats for you tonight. So this is our closest activity center just north of us at 5 Mile and Overland. You can see here that there are approximately 1,645 jobs within the proximity, and there's only about 7% of the available acreage around the actual activity center radius is actually vacant. So there's very limited areas for future redevelopment. And you'll also see that the housing units per acre in this area is only 1.8 dwelling units per acre. Seeing as we're in such substantial need for housing, that was pretty surprising to us because this area does have very good proximity to goods, services, schools, parks, and jobs. Another thing that we wanted to point out is our adjacency to city limits. So city limits does actually end today around Victory Road. There's a few parcels who hop the line, and the rest is within the area of impact. Several people know there are limited sewer capacity availability in the area south of Victory Road because of some of the existing situations and the ongoing sewer moratorium that's in place. So there are limited opportunities further south of Victory Road for additional housing capacity in the near future. Shown here is the suburban land use designation for the site. And you can see since this plan was done in 2011 and updated in 2021, R1C has been allowed within the zone, as a zone within the future land use designation for some time. Shown here, you can see several principles of Blueprint Boise, which is our comprehensive plan. It says that it's asking for an integration of housing types and price ranges, housing types and densities, diverse land use patterns, infill to avoid costly extensions of transportation facilities, minimizing travel distances, variety of housing types, and then the expansion of roadways specific to this area. Shown here is the zoning map. So it's important to note that in any other year in the past, we probably would have applied for a planned unit development underneath the old code to reduce our lot sizes. But the new code doesn't allow that process as far as I understand, and you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. But under the modern zoning code, we do need to rezone our property to get reduced lot sizes. So the R1C is driven by the need for the reduced lot sizes. So shown here, again, property size 3.34 acres, total unit 22 buildable parcels. Our minimum lot size is at 3,500 square feet, and that's a proposed density of 6.6 dwelling units per acre. Just in case it's brought up tonight, we wanted to show some of the adjacent subdivisions and the years they were developed, which is quite some time ago. And we wanted to walk you through some of the opportunities and constraints that we faced when we were developing the site. So the adjacent subdivisions, because they were developed some time ago and under previous planning theories and policies, there were a lot of adjacent subdivisions which are terminated in cul-de-sacs instead of perimeter stubs to our property. Targhee Street also is a required roadway extension. And once we get the roadway in, the planters and the sidewalk, that eats up about 1.1 acres of our site. We are trying to create consistency with the adjacent varied subdivisions. And then also because of the way that our property jogs against one of the neighbors who's here tonight, we do have limited usable space available because about 0.89 of an acre is dedicated to that unusable space in the front. So we wanted to just show you some of the dimensional differences between the zone. So on the left, you can see the R1B zone, in the middle, our project, and on the right, the R1C zone. So you can see we are using the lot size of the R1C zone, but our density is more similar to the R1B zone. And you should have seen in the staff report that the old R1C zone and the old code was actually 8 dwelling units per acre. So we're still even below the old R1C zone. We are requesting the R1C setbacks, and we just wanted to point out that even though by densities calculations, we could do 16 units with R1B, because of the lot size requirements and the frontage improvements that we need to do, we really could only fit 10 units. So we just want to make sure it's clear tonight that as things move forward, we really do need to request that rezone in order to reduce our lot size. Shown here are just some conceptual elevations for the project. And I'm happy to bring these up again if needed. And then we did have our neighborhood meeting, and I'm sure several people will talk through that tonight, but we did get the feedback on the density and the neighborhood compatibility and the traffic safety. Along the way, we have removed 5 units and we have added that detached sidewalk along 5 Mile. We did receive the staff report, and that includes conditions for airport navigation easement, which we're happy to do, sound attenuation, happy to do. We're continuing to work through the temporary easement, access easement for fire turnaround with ACHD, and the details of the roadway approval. And we are willing to comply with the conditions for the class 2 and 3 trees. So with that, we'll stand for your recommendation of approval for the rezone and preliminary plat.
Okay, great. Anything else from your team? Good to go. Okay, thank you, Ms. Womack. Stand by. Next up, I don't think it is certainly not in chambers, but online either, is the representative from the Neighborhood Association Southwest Ada County, Marissa Keith, who is not here. Make sure. Nope, we're good to go. Okay. So with that, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
since the real focus of this hearing is the rezone, because, a conforming subdivision is kind of the automatic. So the question I'm going to ask is really about how to think about the rezone. So I guess my first question is, in the modern zoning code, I think I know where I should be to look for the approval criteria for a rezone, but I just want to make sure with you. So the part of the code I'm under is 11.5-04. It's talking about basically amending the zoning map. So it kind of doesn't match exactly what it used to be. So could you just review the criteria that we should consider tonight for the rezone, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So there are a few criteria for rezone. They are being shown on your screen. The first is that the amendment is needed to correct technical error or because of change conditions or circumstances in the surrounding area. The second is that the proposed amendment is in the best interest of the public convenience and general welfare. And the third is that the scale, height, density, and mobility networks. Sorry, I had to scroll. Are compatible with the surrounding development or made compatible through a development agreement, which is not proposed tonight, and that the proposed amendment is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. So this is all on page 59 and matches that part of the code. So a quick question. So it seems to me that the decision point here is really going to be the compatibility with surrounding development. So can you talk about why the city believes that this specific development is compatible with everything else around it?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's a great question. So again, this is designated as suburban on the future land use map within which the R1C zoning is allowed. And that has been generally decided as something that would be compatible in those areas. Additionally, the applicant is proposing single-family homes, which are compatible with the adjacent single-family homes. And the lot sizes would be within what is allowed in the R1C zoning.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Go ahead.
So if we left this R1B, what's the maximum number using the R1B ratios that could fit on these 3.34 acres?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the maximum amount of units that could fit on this parcel under R1B zoning would be 16. However, there is a large consideration for the roadway extension that does take up a lot of the land.
Right. So just to clarify, so at issue here is the difference between 16 and 22 units.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Torres.
I have a question for the applicant. You mentioned that you were reducing the number of units from 27 to 22. Can you talk about why you made that decision? Is it related to what was just discussed, or is it something else?
Chair, Commissioners, can we put the PowerPoint back up? Sorry, I'm a visual person. So I like picture. I'm sure others do too. So shown here, you can see through the neighborhood meeting process, we discussed with several neighbors what a transition between their homes and this project would be reasonable. With that feedback, we decided removing about 5 units was the appropriate recourse because, and I just wanted to cover that again quickly. So because of the R1B lot area minimum of 9,000 square feet, we can truly only fit 10 units. So in order to justify a reason of any kind, we felt that 22 would be most compatible.
Mr. Chairman, another question.
Go ahead.
Also for you. Excuse me. The other question I had is you mentioned you mentioned our housing need right now. And I know you probably can't answer this with specificity, but I guess try your best. What do you anticipate these units would go for as far as sale or rent?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioners, I think we all know there's a lot of changes happening in the housing market right now, especially with interest rates and supply and demand. So at this time, it's next to impossible for us to throw out a number that we could reasonably commit to and would probably disappoint everyone if we threw out a number. So
That's fair. I'm just trying to get at the affordability question, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Mhm.
Commissioner Moore.
This is a question for staff. Do you know what the maximum density in this airport overlay zone is?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is Airport Influence Area A, which does not have any residential density limits. The requirements from the airport to develop any residential in this area would be to have some sound mitigation with building materials and to include an airport navigation easement over the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I've got a question of staff. I don't recall seeing it. I might have missed it. When we have a dead end street like this and we anticipate that it's going to connect at some point, there's often a condition that there's a sign at the end of that thing that's very clear. It says this road will be extended so that everybody is acutely aware of that, hoping to avoid issues in the future. I didn't see that in any of this. Did I miss it?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that was part of the ACHD conditions of approval.
Okay.
I don't believe that actually made it in the staff report, but they are online in the public record.
Okay, so if this were to be recommended for approval, it does not need to be an additional condition because it's part of the public record. Is that what you're telling me, or would it need to be added?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, since it is an ACHD condition of approval, and we do abide by any of their conditions, and that's part of our conditions, that would be included.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Not looking like it.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
Oh,
Moore.
one more. So it looks like this has been reviewed by the fire department. The fire department's reviewed and approved just the one hammerhead. They don't need any intermediates where some of these other units or any of these other lots are proposed.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the fire department has reviewed and approved it. I think that their policy is if they can still drive and turn around at some point in the development, they only need the one turnaround.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Good to go? Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and bring questions to a close and open it up to public testimony. So I have a list of about 7 names. I'm going to go through that list one at a time in order of how people signed up. At the conclusion of what I have, if you want to testify, please just simply, we'll get to it, but you'll raise your hand and you'll come on up and do the same thing until we get through. And don't think we're going to have anybody that's online. As a reminder, when I call your name up, please come to the podium, adjust the mic as you need, and please, please, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to do your testifying, okay? First up is Don Taylor, followed by Deb Taylor. Hello, Mr. Taylor.
Hello, my name is Don Taylor. Address is 2156 South Daring Place, Boise, Idaho. I'd like to, give my appreciation, Planning and Zoning Commission members for allowing us, to speak here this evening. And, we're, categorically against the rezoning, proposal here. The existing subdivision, was, built approximately, 2 housing units per acre, that, well below the existing, zoning, requirements. The existing zoning allows 4.8 units per acre. The rezoning would allow a density change from 4.8 to 12.4 units per acre. Utilizing the authority to shrink the partial size to the minimum allowed by the existing zoning would result in a 400% increase in the density as compared to the surrounding subdivisions. That is compared to the way they're currently built to to the density that it could be within the existing zoning. So 400% increase on a density. And if they would go to the new zoning, it would increase the comparative, looking at existing homes completely surrounding the area to what the new zoning would permit, would be a 600% increase in the density of housing units within that area. And that directly addresses the concept of compatibility and the concepts of you're now having 600% more houses in the same amount of area that the entire subdivision has around it. The developers is also utilizing the expectation that the attached properties to the east and the west will probably be developed as indicated, the road heading east. So changing this zoning would also impact the future changing of that zoning to match whatever this zoning is. Because if this gets approved, by golly, that's going to get approved also, and it's just going to continue that road straight on through. The goals of the city is to achieve the goals the city desires to achieve can be accomplished within the current zoning. Additionally, the concerns of the surrounding subdivisions could be reduced by knowing that the current zoning will allow for some change, some growth, but limit the enormous change that the rezoning would allow. Rezoning will also make sales of existing properties more difficult. And I believe there's some members here that actually talk about very recent circumstances that it has impacted the ability to sell their property already. Zoning is our only assurance to the property owners, that when we buy in an area, that we know that the limits of how much we can develop our property, and also the limits of the property that are within the same zoning that we're in.
Time.
So if you have, let's see, if you have any desire to consider the overwhelming negative response to the zoning change, hopefully you will deny this request.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. That's your 3
3
minutes.
minutes?
I appreciate it. Yep. Thank you very much. You went over a little bit, but we appreciate you coming out and testifying. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is Deb Taylor, followed by, I think it's Kathy, is it Sorger or Sarger? Sorger. Okay, coming up on deck.
Hello, my name is Deb. I wrote, but it's Deborah Taylor. I live at 2156 South Daring Place, and we appreciate you allowing us to be able to speak on behalf of our subdivision and our concerns. We appreciate you taking them under advisement. I am against and opposed the rezoning, just because, as you can even see where it says that it can go up to possibly 41, then there could be the possibility of the other one that increases to 80, even though they're proposing to 20. A lot of times things can be rezoned again once that zoning has been allowed. So we'd like to make sure you take that under consideration. And basically everybody here, once the rezone is approved, there is no requirement that I had just mentioned that the developer to proceed with the proposed development, that they couldn't ask for more later. They would have the right to resubmit, redesign, and sell to another party. Once the rezone is approved and the property becomes more valuable to the developer, the only restriction to the developer is that they abide by the new rezoning requirements. Developers do what developers do best, and we just love what they do because they do come in and do a beautiful job. But they will ultimately proceed along the path of the greatest return of their investment. And we're obviously looking at our investment of our property as well. Once they achieve the price of the rezone, they can and will modify their efforts and plan to achieve this goal. Everyone highly recommends that you make the comment, no matter how short, or will allow that the opportunity to submit an appeal to any recommendation that this board makes this evening. So I hope you take it under advisement that we would like to hold the rezoning to the current that it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Kathy Sorger, I believe, and followed by, I think it's Deb Lane.
My name is Kathy Sorger. My address is 10323 West Calico. I oppose this. My property would back up to this. And I have different numbers because it seems like it changes with every document, or I think today you said it would be 3 stories, and in the latest letter that I have, it shows a 2-story. So that's a big difference. Within 15 feet of my fence, a 40-story, looking down on my property. And I had asked about fences when we met the first time, and they said they would take that into consideration. And then they said that everybody has fences, but they're not real fences. I mean, they're old fences. They're certainly not a separation of a property that's going to be that large. And several years ago, across 5 Mile from this property, they went through the same rezoning, asking for more properties per acre. And they went through the process, and that was denied because all of the properties around that parcel was also larger lots like ours are on both sides of this proposal. So I am against that. I'll give my time to the next person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. Okay, Deb Lane and then Pamela Heisler. And Miss Heisler, if you wouldn't mind coming over this way, that would expedite things a little bit.
Hi, it's Deb Lane, 2134 Daring Place, Boise, Idaho. I just wanted to say, I appreciate what you say about our neighborhood because it is awesome. It's awesome to live there and be 10 minutes down from Boise, and stores on the corner you can walk in the winter, all of those things. But my concern is we have lovely neighbors that if it is 3 stories and 40 feet, 15 feet from their existing homes, you wouldn't want that looking down into your house. That's all I'm saying. I just hope you take that in consideration because there's a lot of those folks that are going to have those 3 stories and have people looking out their windows. And then they won't be able to sell their house either because nobody's going to want to live behind a 3-story apartment or single house. So anyway,
Gotcha.
I disagree, and hopefully you take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Pamela Heisler followed by Shirley Velasquez.
Pamela Heisler, and I live at 2133 South Daring Place, and I am also opposed to this. We just put a metal building on our lot and was told we couldn't go above our house, but these will be way above our homes. So if we couldn't even build a building above our house roof, I'm just confused why they can. So I'm definitely opposed to this.
Okay, thank you very much. Shirley, I think it's Velasquez. Great, followed by Clint Hoops, I think.
So my name is Shirley Velasquez, and we own the property in front of this whole deal at 2250 South 5 Mile. So I am in agreement with my neighbors that these houses being this tall are going to be an invasion of our privacy, looking into our backyards. We weren't opposed to rent style homes being built back there and not 16, 22, 27 units, but houses that fit in with the subdivision. We understand that things need to move on. However, this does not fit in the backyards of these people's homes that have lived there for over 30 years. And it lowers our value of our homes. And it's just not right. It's not fair. It's not fair to them. So I am opposed to the rezoning. Yes. And I think that if they want to subdivide that piece of land, that it needs to fit in with the subdivision, you know? And I mean, they did come to our door and offer to buy our last piece, their last piece of the puzzle, but we're holding out. So we told them no.
Okay,
Excuse me,
thank you,
folks.
thank
No
you.
clapping.
Okay, Clint Hoops, followed by, we're then going to open it up to anybody that's in chambers.
Clint Hopes, 10500 West Hollandale Drive. I'm, again, an adjoining property. One of their lots is going to be looking down into my backyard. And again, I'm not adverse to redevelop or the development, the idea of developing that area. I do have problems with the size of the lots and that density, the size of the houses. And while it's not your issue, that additional density in there is going to create further traffic problems out there on 5 Mile, just because of the offset with Hollandales and everything. The number of vehicles through there is just going to be that much more difficult.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this point, is there anybody in the chambers who wishes to testify? Okay, go ahead and come on up. And if you want to speak, I would ask you to come sit in the front row. We can do this one by one. Just as a reminder, please state your name and your address for the record, and you too will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Michael Wetzel. My address is 10586 West Riley Court. My property is 3 doors down to the south of the stuff in question here. My thought is I'm opposed to the rezoning, but I think could be a really good compromise made here where you don't have to have the 9,000 square foot, lot, but fit 16 lots into the area that they have. I'm looking at what was proposed tonight. There needs to be some issues taken care of on 5 Mile Road. Southbound 5 Mile to eastbound Overland needs a right turn lane really bad. That runs into traffic issues there, and it would add to that problem. But I think from looking at what was proposed tonight, I'm opposed to the zoning change, but I think there could be some compromises made to where, a conditional use permit or however you guys word that would make it to where the houses and the lots would fit in with the neighborhood better and still, give the developer some, room to make a buck. That's why he's there. So, but that's, what I wanted to put out for you guys to maybe consider.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Wetzel. Appreciate it. Okay, next on up, we'll just go from left to right if that's okay.
My name is John Rote. I live at 2370 South Kings Mill. I'm on the other side of 5 Mile. And about 95% of the time I turn south to go towards Boise. And there are 2 streets that come out and they do not intersect. They're not at the same spot. This one would be another one going east within 150 feet. That means 3 accesses within 150 feet. I'm not even sure that meets DOT. That's a danger. And I think if this board were to consider rezoning, you might be doing that at the cost of people's safety. I think that's an issue. Now, I'm with the gentleman who just spoke. I'm not opposed to the development. I understand that there are young Idahoans that can't afford homes here. And I understand that we got to shrink the size of some of these lots in order for them to make it affordable. I think that's great. And I don't know what your motivation is, if it's to maximize their dollar per square foot or to provide affordable housing. But, I like that idea. What I don't like is I don't like how dramatic the difference is. Many people have spoken. how dramatic the zoning is that's different. And one of the things that you guys have to deal with as a leadership in the city is when you go from one zone to the next, you set precedences and thresholds. And if they get this zoning, they can go to the maximum of that threshold. I don't think they're going to build a house that's going to be 40 feet high, but they could. I don't think that they're probably going to put 27 units in there, but they could. And so, you know, I think most people here would be up for a compromise. I really do. You know, we want to be able to share the territory. We want to make housing available for young Idahoans or whatever, make it affordable. But we want to make sure that people are safe. We want to make sure that people's home values are maintained. And I think that we want to make sure that there's a reasonable divergence or a reasonable spectrum of the size of homes and the size of lots. I realize that's your responsibility, but the zonings set those thresholds, and who knows, maybe there could just be a compromise to say, okay, maybe we change the zoning, but you have to agree to, you know, something a little less than the maximum of what it allows. My concern again is, I'll just restate it. It's the safety. It's the difference in the density and the values of the property and how different it's going to be if we change the zoning. So essentially, I'm opposed to it, but not necessarily opposed to the development.
Thank you, Mr. Rote. Appreciate it.
Alexander Sukala. I live at 103-725 West Hollandale Drive. My lot would be directly adjacent to 3 of the properties that are being developed. And thank you so much for hearing me out today. My reason for opposition to the development is that we currently have a fence in our backyard that is to our waist high, see-through fence. They didn't say anything about their fences, but essentially our backyard will turn from just a field to now three-story buildings looking directly at us, and there goes essentially our whole backyard and our whole privacy. So that's a big issue for me. Is I want to be able to get home, go outside, enjoy the yard, enjoy our fruit trees and stuff like that, and now we're going to have these huge developments surrounding us. Second concern is more so the aesthetics of the neighborhood. When you look at our neighborhood, you see a lot of 1-story homes, 2-story homes on anywhere from 1/8 of an acre to 1/2 of an acre. Now what's going to happen is if this zoning issue gets passed, it's going to, as everyone else said, set a precedent that now we can put 40 units within 3 acres or 40 units per acre. And if that happens, what's to stop this from continuing throughout the whole neighborhood? What's to stop it continuing down the whole road? What's to stop developers from buying out houses right next door to us and developing those houses? And so for me, and I feel like a lot of my neighbors as well, it feels like an invasion of our neighborhood to go to such a drastic change from what we are used to. It's a quiet neighborhood, and this subdivision change is really only in the developer's best interests. It's not in the community's best interests. And I think that's a cause of concern that needs to be looked at. More so than just what are the legal requirements of development here and what do they need to be remeasured as. I think there needs to be some kind of appreciation for the spirit of the community and the heart of the community and how the current development is right now. And if they are going to develop, to have some kind of meeting in the middle of maybe they don't do 3-story homes where they would line up 3 of them to one person's backyard. Maybe it's 1-to-1 ratio where instead of 30 units on 3 acres, maybe they do 10 or 15, where the developers can still get great money for their buck. They can still, be very profitable. But I don't think that there's a significant amount of a reason to, just for money's sake, to have plenty of houses and plenty of doors, plenty of rental opportunities, that we should put all of our neighbors and everyone else in our community sort of in an uncomfortable position that now everyone who's living here is like on Zillow and is like, when can I sell my house? Where can I get another house? And put in an uncomfortable position. We just moved to this home a month or 2 months ago, and now we're finding out this is happening. And so we're put in a quite uncomfortable position. I'd like to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
I'm Kitty Lemaster.
Can I have you
live-
just pull that microphone down just a little bit so we can make
Am I
sure we
that
hear you?
short?
What's that? There you go. Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'll be short, but not sweet.
Okay.
I'm Kitty Lemaster and I live at 10258 West Hollandale Drive. Just want to say that I oppose this heartily. So do most of my neighbors, probably all of them. And we have a quiet neighborhood and they're short, most of them are short half acres. So they're country. We're out in the country there. And then they're not compatible with our neighbors to do whatever it is you're gonna do. And then I also want you to know that I don't think it's right for you to go through all of these meetings and postcards and talking to you when you've already decided that you're gonna do it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
My name's Scott Wardle. I live at 10612 West Hollandale, which is basically right on the corner of 5 Mile and Hollandale, directly from the property. When they come out of that street, the lights will be right into my property, which is not an issue, not the issue. I guess the main issue I have is I got here late, so I apologize, but I appreciate you giving me the time to talk. As an investor, I would assume that they did their due diligence and knew full well what this property was zoned before any money changed hands. So they probably decided this is going to cash flow. It's worth doing. What they're trying to do now is change the rules and maybe stretch things a little bit so they can cram a few more houses on there and make a few more dollars. But I obviously am opposed to this. My other concern with the rezone, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think one of the main reasons for the rezone also was to get that height extension. Because we can't build out, so we can build up. So now we're gonna have 3-story houses, like I think a couple of people have mentioned. And if I'm wrong, that'd be great. My other concern is, like John Rote said, I live on that same street. I pull out of there, I have a shop in the back. And there's a lot of traffic going left and right every morning or all throughout the day. And I don't know if an impact study's been done, or maybe that was required from the developer, if that was something that was looked into. When my wife and I bought this property that we have about 5 years ago, we had talked to the city about doing similar, building a house in the back, splitting something off. And we were told, nope, can't, it's not zoned for that. We're not allowing any new access off of 5 Mile. Well, 6 months later, if you go up by the freeway where there's the overpass, Corey Barton decides he's going to cram a whole bunch of houses in there. So it was okay for them to add to the congestion on 5 Mile, but not the little guy. Unfortunately, you know, we see this time and time again with any little scrap of property that's in the valley. People want to grab it up. We need to develop it. Obviously, people need a place to live. My concern is, like's been mentioned before, I'm not opposed to the development. It would be naive to think that that lot's going to sit there till the end of the time and nobody's ever going to put anything on it, but not these houses. You know, something that's more compatible with the neighborhood that is there, that fits the zoning. That's why it was zoned that way from the beginning. And I realized these houses, some of them were built in the 70s and 80s, and they had bigger properties. And I grew up in Boise. I'm born and raised here. And it was the boonies there, right? Well, it's not the boonies anymore. But we need to try to mingle the new properties with the existing property so it doesn't look like such skyscrapers in the middle of a subdivision. And I'll just leave it with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wardle. Is there anybody else in the chambers that wishes to testify who hasn't already? Doesn't look like it. We have, oh, no, that's still Luke. He can go home now. Okay, last call. Anybody else in the chambers who wishes to testify? If not, we're going to turn it back over to the applicant for rebuttal. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and Ms. Womack, if you'd like to come back up, and you've got 5 minutes, I think, for rebuttal.
Chair, Commissioners, could we get the PowerPoint back up? lot of slides. My apologies. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for your time tonight. Neighbors, thank you for showing up and speaking on this item. Sorry, a little distracted on the little pop-up. We appreciate the dialogue. We believe that there are several ways to make sure that this is harmonious with the neighbors. Several ideas were brought up tonight by the neighbors. One thing that was mentioned by staff was that a development agreement is not proposed tonight. We're not against a development agreement. We're happy to do a development agreement as long as we review the conditions, of course. In such development agreement, they could lock us into the site plan. They could lock us into the units shown here and several other things that were talked about tonight. So happy to consider that. I spoke with our civil engineer regarding the change from the neighborhood meeting. And in more detail on the technical side of measurements, there was removal of some of the northern lots in order to ensure that all of the lots had a more similar width of 40 feet, so that there was similarities between the proposed home lot sizes. Also, earlier tonight, there was discussion about what is at stake tonight. Is it 16 units versus 22 units? And we do want to clarify that what is at stake tonight is 10 units if the rezone was not recommended for approval versus 22 units because of the lot size requirements. And then with that development agreement, if it was considered or whatever process to bind us to conditions is needed, they could also ensure that future changes would be limited to the densities or the lot sizes, the lot counts shown here. So we're happy to consider that. Regarding number of stories, I'm not part of the rewrite of the zoning code. I'm sure there was great tedious process involved in 3 stories not to exceed 40 feet versus 35. Our client is happy to build 35-foot tall homes and happy to consider a condition there. There is no intention at this time to develop anything beyond a 2-story home, but if that gives everybody some peace of mind, I'm happy to do that. Regarding fences, no fences are proposed at the moment, but that doesn't mean we couldn't consider fences. In this case, we do want to be cognizant of the neighbors because some neighbors do have fences from what I understand. Everyone knows it's a little hard to mow the weeds between doubled up fences. So we want to make sure we have some flexibility to work through that. But happy to consider it. Regarding access, the project was reviewed by ACHD, and this is the only area that we can access 5 Mile. Other than that, we will stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. The matter is now, this closes the public testimony and the matter is now before the commission. We are a recommending body in this instance for both the rezone and the preliminary plat to the city council.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'll do a short. So I'm prepared to move to recommend approval to city council for the rezone and the subdivision. But before I do that, because in that motion, if I was up here all alone, I would probably make a condition that the city and the developer reach a development agreement prior to the issuing of the final plat that basically ensures that what has been put on the table before us tonight is what is built. So we don't have this issue of someone taking their rezone and then resubmitting another plat with more units or taller units or everything. I think the reason the city didn't require it is because it may not strictly be necessary if you do all the geometry, but if the applicant's willing to do it, I would probably put it in as a condition. So before I make a motion, I wondered, because I don't want to get all back and forth amending a condition. So I guess I wondered what my fellow commissioners thought of this and locking it in more or less as is with the development agreement.
Okay, Commissioner Seha.
I would be open to that. I would entertain a development agreement
Okay.
or support.
What do you think, Chris?
Well, before I answer, is there any other comments down on the other end? Specific to Commissioner Gillespie's point at this point, and then certainly any other things that need to be said.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I think I could go either way. Honestly, I could go either way on that. I think that, you know, to the applicant's point, there's only, with just the strict dimensions of that lot, there's only so much that they can do just with the way that that road narrows. They're trying to get, you know, a certain location of that curb cut. It kind of looks like there's only so much they can do before they have to start getting a variance for reduced widths and all that good stuff. And, you know, the lot width average for R1C is 25 feet, your minimum street frontage is 20 feet. Your lot area is 3,500 square feet. I mean, once you take the road, the landscaping, the detached sidewalks, you take all the frontage stuff away and just those kind of sections that don't really meet it, there's only so much that they can do. Or there's only so much area that's gonna strictly meet that through a subdivision. I could go either way.
Okay.
But I can see the argument for not, just because of the dimensions of that lot.
Commissioner Gillespie, I'm all for it. I think that what you suggested makes a lot of sense to me. I think what we're hearing from many of the folks in the audience tonight was predictability. And while I think, and I'm pretty assured by the applicant, and I don't have any reason to doubt that what was said is what would get built. Having said that, I think some assurances would go a long way, and I'd be fully in support of that. So if 2-story homes is what the developer is saying that they publicly would build, and there's a number of folks who said 3 stories is too much, putting that and codifying that in documentation form to me, and the other things that we heard to me before it moves to council makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Torres.
I also, like Commissioner Moore, could go either way. I hear the concerns about the number of stories. You know, if that will provide some comfort, like you said, to come up with an agreement that caps them at the 2 stories or at the 35 feet, I'm open to that. But otherwise, I'm willing to look at it from both perspectives.
Okay, so I think we have at least an answer on that.
So I'm ready
part
to
of
make
things.
a
Okay, Commissioner Gillespie, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve CAR-24-12, SUP 24-35 with all the terms and conditions in the staff report, adding an additional condition that the city and the developer reach a development agreement, which basically locks in the current proposed subdivision plat, as well as the general building design, including a height limit of 2 stories or 35 feet.
Great. We have a motion by Commissioner Gillespie. Before I open it up to a second, quick clarity from staff. In the staff report presentation, there was that additional condition that you cited. And I'm trying to remember, would that need to be added by the motion, or is that included in our staff report and already amended? I don't recall.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so the modifications to
Yes.
condition 4 would need to be added. It's not written that way in the staff report.
Okay, so that's.
I don't know what it is.
It's that right there.
Oh, in addition to my motion, I would include the modification to condition 4 as is on the screen now.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Gillespie to include the condition number 4 as presented by staff, as well as as additional condition that a development agreement with the details cited be presented as part of the application to council on the night of the hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Torres. Is
Mr.
there
Chairman.
discussion? Commissioner Gillespie.
So, as I said at the outset, I think the crux of this is what the word compatibility means in our code. And so I was listening very carefully during the testimony for what is non-compatibility. Well, usually we call that a hardship, or, you know, it's a problem, right? It's a specific problem. To me, compatibility can't just be a general observation that something is unlike something else. It has to be specific. It has to be specific to this application. It has to be tangible. It has to have a locus in the physical application. So I heard a couple of hardships mentioned very specifically. One is that it would hurt property values. Two, privacy concerns from the buildings into backyards. Three, traffic on 5 Mile. And four, a question about the intersection spacing on 5 Mile. And essentially, it's a curb cut question. So I'm going to respond to each of those four as to why I didn't think they were disqualifying or created incompatibility issues as the code directs us to think about it. One, on the property values, we've heard this has been an issue for 30 years where people think that an application will hurt their property values. And because there's never a good way to prove that or show that or demonstrate it, to the best of my knowledge, we've never considered that in and of itself as a hardship. If we did, by the way, all hell would break loose in terms of trying to manage this process. Hardship two, the privacy concerns from the tall buildings. Again, these buildings, right now, someone could go and build a very tall home next to 35 feet tall and taller than that up to the top of the roof. So that possibility is always and already present when you have a vacant lot next to your backyard. I didn't think that these homes significantly changed my view of that privacy issue. And the two traffic and intersection issues, ACHD has a policy manual and a bunch of people who spend their whole life managing it that's hundreds of pages thick that talks about just that issue that you raised, sir, about where intersections and curb cuts go and traffic. And I've come to the view that I'm going to accept what ACHD determines. There are cases where ACHD says, no, you cannot build that there, and the city abides by that. That apparently is not the case here. And so I'm going to abide by ACHD's ideas on intersection spacing. And again, I'll just tell you that there are times where they say, no, you can't do that. So for those reasons, I supported the general idea, but I was sensitive to the problem of scope creep after we approved the rezone, because the person who mentioned it is technically correct that once the rezone's done, they could pull the sub and resubmit, another plan. And I get that that's very uncomfortable. So I think the DA, even if it locks in what kind of has to be there, I think it's a fine idea. So there you go.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gillespie. Are there any other comments?
I
Commissioner
just have-
Seha.
Sharon, I just have one comment, and that's regarding height and transition. As someone who sat on the modern zoning code update, that was discussed heavily. And what we were looking at is we didn't want to go from 35 to 50 or 60, right? Because those are huge differences. And so if you go to our modern code now and you look at the information available, it goes from 35 to 40 to 45. So you're seeing a 5-foot difference. I wanted to share that for folks if you haven't already seen it, and for the public, because that was something that I did hear from a handful of you.
Okay. Any other comments? I just real quickly, I'll jump in here. So the totality of this area on the future land use map is labeled as suburban. And when I see 6.6 units per acre, that fits the suburban template. I understand the half-acre, thought on what that might look like, but the whole thing is viewed as suburban, according to our future land use map. This zone is permitted under that particular overlay there. So the difference is, I think what Commissioner Gillespie pointed out at the beginning is really it's 4.8 to 6.6. That's really the difference here. And I think that the key word is compromise. And I think that with this DA, making certain that, again, and this is just to make sure everybody is aware, this has to go to council. We're just a recommending body here. So there's another opportunity that you will all get something in the mail saying to come back out if you are inclined to testify to council when the final decision is made. But hopefully that agreement is in place and gives certainly much more certainty to the situation and a little more ironclad and gets to some of the concerns and reaches that word compromise. So I'm in support of the motion. I think our code comprehensive plan, general ideas of what we're trying to do with housing is, I think Commissioner Torres mentioned earlier too, are in alignment. And I think hopefully with the agreement in place, it's not going to be perfect, but hopefully it's agreeable as much as possible. So that's where I stand. With that, no more comment. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Chairman, can I actually jump in with one comment real quick?
Go ahead, Commissioner Torres.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with what everybody else said, but I think, especially since these are single family homes, they're not apartments, they're not, fourplexes or anything like that. I think it's important to compromise on the height because that seems to be a big concern that almost everybody shared. But the number of units are still getting built, which is what the developer was looking to do. It increases our housing supply. I think it is in compliance both with the comprehensive plan and also the modern zoning code and the goals of increasing the housing supply in the city. And so that's why I'm willing to support that compromise and why I seconded the motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Danley,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes this evening's hearing.